everybody. Thanks for joining us. So today we've got a panel. It's all about the growth of blockchain gaming, and I'm joined by Aggroed and James. Guys, do you want to just quickly go ahead and introduce yourselves?
After you, James.
Thank you. I'm James Ho. I'm part of the strategic partnerships for Animoca brands. My role here involves business strategy, deal flow investments, partnerships, and ecosystem. So I have a pretty good peripheral overview on the whole Animoca sort of ecosystem, sort of make guys play nice together. To date now, we've done over 100 investments now, so a lot of parties to keep in touch with and a lot of cool things happening.
Yeah, absolutely. That ecosystem is ever expanding. Over to you, Aggroed.
Yeah, and I'm Aggroed. I'm one of the founders of Splinterlands. We're one of the biggest blockchain game projects out there. Actually, one of the biggest dApps out there recently. So happy to have worked with Animoca in the past, and happy to go present on NFTs, gaming, blockchain, DeFi, and just happy to be in this space. Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got to work together a little bit too, because Yield Guild Games is a client of Emfarsis, which is my company, and they're partnered with Splinterlands and have made some pretty cool investments in your game. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Leah Callon-Butler and the director of Emfarsis. I was also the writer and narrator of the Play to Earn documentary, which was all about the rise of NFT gaming in the Philippines, if you've seen it. And I also write a regular column for CoinDesk, which is all about the adoption of blockchain technology across Southeast Asia. But without further ado, let's dive in. So today's panel is all about the growth of blockchain gaming. And I think Axie Infinity is the use case that everyone loves to point to, because they have had some pretty incredible growth figures this year. They've broken, I think, 2 million users now. They've just announced a $152 million Series B led by A16Z. And the kind of protocol revenue that they're raking in is competing with the likes of Bitcoin and Ethereum and almost every other dApp out there, which is just amazing, considering that, it wasn't too long ago that hardly anyone was talking about NFTs, let alone NFT gaming. So with that, other people may not be familiar with the type of growth that you guys are experiencing. So, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the growth that you've experienced in 2021 in terms of onboarding new users, raising funds, and so on, just looking at your own game or your own ecosystem. James, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, thank you. We're proud to be early supporter of Sky Mavis, which is Axie Infinity. So I had the pleasure of sort of seeing that hyper growth. And I think that the play to earn being proven by Axie Infinity really sort of put this whole blockchain gaming industry on a head spin. A lot of new projects come into play. Likewise, Animoca are not only investors, we're also builders. So we have quite a few sort of different projects that we're also building and seeing some growth. One of which is F1 Delta Time. We recently kicked off one called Rev Racing, which we built internally using the Rev token. What we've done here is we actually have the ability to be more flexible without IP restrictions. We kicked off with our partners from Polygon and we did something quite interesting. We actually dropped and rewarded a lot of our players that held Rev. We dropped 20,000 cars, NFTs, and we backed it up with 150,000 of Rev competition token. We saw the user growth spike. Using Polygon, we were allowed to subsidize all the gas fees. So some of the challenges that were hindering the growth was still some of the gas challenges. Moving apart in F1 was a couple $100 US. That wasn't for everybody, in particular to certain regions. But with Rev Racing, we saw almost a 5,000% spike in user growth on the first 7 days because we're backed by play to earn. So we're starting to see some really interesting things also in another portfolio piece called Gamey. Gamey, we launched Arc 8, which also saw a super hyper growth on Polygon as well, primarily because we're starting to enter a space where we're putting the token into gameplay for rewards and dropping NFTs for experiences. Outside from internal projects, we were seeing some amazing new projects being excited by the whole play to earn movement. We're seeing some AAA studios from traditional gaming coming into our space, trying to build next generation games. Animoca has a role of supporting them in terms of educating them on play to earn, tokenomics, and NFT strategy.
That is super interesting. I've heard a lot of people saying like, oh, AAA game studios will never get into blockchain. It's against their centralized business model. And I'm sort of thinking this sounds like a Kodak moment. Uh, but we'll get into that later. Aggroed, what sort of growth have you seen this year with Splinterlands?
It's been astounding. I mean, we can barely keep everything moving with just how quickly we're growing. We 11x'd in August. I 2x'd in September. I'm set to 2x again in October. I mean, it's just it's everything. We hit 1 million registered users for the game, 500,000 spellbook owners, which are basically paying customers and people that have purchased the right to earn. It's just nonstop growth, new people. The Discord keeps growing, and I mean, just every metric is basically up and to the right, except for like developer sanity and sleeping hours per night.
That's awesome. Congratulations. I mean, this is a really exciting time for this space. But I mean, you guys have been in this space a lot longer than just 2021. So for anyone who's new to it, could you actually just take us a little bit back, and what was it like when you were building in, say, 2018, 2019, and no one had heard an NFT? James, I know that you guys were investing in some of the biggest NFT platforms today back then. So were people telling you were crazy?
Yes, more than once actually. So I think what happened in 2018 was one of the theses that we had was that this was probably going to be, we're entering into Web3. So if we had to make a playbook, what would we do? So we started investing in what did Web2 needed in order for it to stand its foot and grow. So we made some bold bets at the time. We knew that we needed marketplaces, we needed wallet technology, we needed gaming. So our primary sort of thesis investments were investing in founders that had that vision. So we're quite lucky. We made 3 bets on marketplaces, and one was OpenSea. And we made an investment into gaming, and somebody dropped out of Sky Mavis, so we doubled down. We thought the guys were amazing. And also we invested in Bitski. But on top of that, we also used what we knew very well from the free-to-play era in terms of our experience, and we acquired Pixel behind Sandbox. So we had quite a few successes early on, and we started following that playbook and using our sort of knowledge in IP, and started buying undervalued free-to-play companies that we felt had a strong ability to be tokenized. Gamey had sat on at the time 20 million users. Now they have 35 million registered users with 2.5 million monthly active users. In the free-to-play sector, that's very not looked upon as that amazing. But if you flip the switch into blockchain, these are numbers that are growing. And what can actual tokenomics integrated into gameplay change rewards, for instances? So we're seeing a lot of really interesting things from that perspective, as well as we're also acquiring some studios to support our sort of demand for gameplay, increasing gameplay experiences. So for people coming into the sector, I think they should start looking into understanding tokenomic design and NFT design as well too.
Yeah, I guess if you don't mind, just a really quick anecdote, which was one of the things that I thought was so brilliant in the Animoca brand story. I learned about the 111 F1 Delta Time car and the auction of that. I think it was the biggest NFT purchase in the world in 2019 at $100,000. Yeah, but no one knew who bought it. And I think Animoca Brands was accused of doing this elaborate marketing stunt to kind of artificially inflate the price of an NFT, because why would anyone spend that much on a car, a digital car? And I think it was like 18 months later or something that the actual buyer was revealed as MetaCoven of Metapurse, which is one of the most prolific NFT collectors in the world now. So I love how the story is unfolding, and people who are skeptical of this space are suddenly going, oh wow, no, there was just some really early thinkers who beat everyone to this place.
No, it was quite amazing. We actually hosted that panel when Metacoven came out to announce who he was. I think Devin was our host from OpenSea. So that was special, right? I think a lot of people felt like this could be real. Who would spend this type of money on buying a car for collectability, right? So now the narrative has completely changed in 2021. NFT
100,000.
I think it was 140 ETH at the time. So it's I think he's since collected quite a few pieces from our F1 series.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what about you, Aggroed? Like, what do you remember pre-NFT summer?
So I remember Cryptokitties just exploding onto the scene and everybody just going nuts for them. And my partner Matt and I were sitting at a restaurant in Philly, like just kind of talking through it and being like, these things are so awesome, but what somebody really ought to do is make a game. I mean, this stuff is just like built for blockchain. We just got to make a game. And he was saying that to me, and I was like, well, it's funny you should mention that. I like when I'm not doing my real work, something else. I'm actually a game designer, and you know, I had been working on a couple different ideas, and you know, the two of us got to talking and realized that we really had all the different components that we needed to go launch something. And so, you know, we started with, you know, a website where you could purchase cards, but even the cards weren't like full images yet. You could just like purchase, this is coming soon. Then it was just the images. Then you could just combine them. Then you could just fight with them. But fighting with them wasn't even all that like sophisticated. You would just spam the same team over and over again. And then we finally got into like, you know, much more strategy and the battles. And then we layered in land and all this other stuff. So it's been like, you know, we were just in the space when we were looking around and there's nothing here. It's just Cryptokitties kind of invented this ERC 721 contract. And then from there we said, what else can we do with it? So, you know, some people ask us, you know, why did you build on Hive? And, you know, we looked at Ethereum and we thought, okay, well, these gas fees are going to be pretty prohibitive. I don't think we can do that. And things like EOS didn't even exist at the time, you know? So it's like, there weren't a lot of options. We chose Hive, and I'm pretty happy with the blockchain that we're on just because of the scalability, the number of transactions. I mean, our game, you know, we move parts of the game off chain, but we still do something like 4 million transactions per day on chain. Wow. And you can compare that to Ethereum that does 1.2 million transactions. So, you know, we have just a ton of people doing a ton of interaction and buying, selling, trading, renting. And, you know, we saw a lot of this back in 2018, but, you know, it's like a journey of blood, sweat, and tears to go get to today, you know. Like we were holding, we were founded on Steam, and we like rode that token from $10 down to like 25 cents. You know, it's like that, you know, people talk about Great Depressions and they talk about, you know, the difficulty of doing business. I mean, you know, the base economy of our chain went from, you know, millions and millions to, you know, like $100,000 or something. I don't even know, but it was terrible. And, but, you know, we survive. We have different money management policies now. And, but, you know, back then there weren't even really like a lot of basic tools, you know, like people, when you started playing our game, you would literally input your key into the game and just hope that like we didn't take your stuff. You know, it's like, okay, we've evolved since then, have like key management systems and just basic rules around like how do we make sure that people are and their funds are safe. Did we lose Leah?
Oh, she froze.
I think she froze. She's just in a quizzical. She's still pondering. She's still pondering here. So what do you see as like the next biggest step of this whole industry? Like where do you think we're going to go, and what do you think we're going to end up? You know, what's the next vision, or what's the next? How do we go from just play to earn to what do you add on to that next?
I think play to earn is play to earn, and also with Gabby, sort of the guild models, we're seeing a lot of innovation in that space. And I think we made some investments into, we have about 15, 16 metaverse investments currently right now. So we're seeing some trends in terms of like, the growth in there is going to be undisputed. You know, seeing how the sandbox is growing. I think the content is going to be important as well, coming into it as well. Hey, Leah, thanks for coming back.
I am so sorry, my internet just dropped out.
You were just staring at us quizzically for a while.
Yeah, I was just so hanging on every word that you were saying. You know, I was stuck. I don't want to interrupt. Should I walk straight into a great convo?
No, go ahead. Do your next question. Just
well, I had a burning question because you said before something that I really kind of grabbed onto. You said you love Cryptokitties, but someone really needs to make a game out of this. And I think that's a really interesting idea because a lot of people are saying that NFT games could be the pathway that onboards the next million, if not billion, new crypto users. And that sounds like that's kind of the way that you were going. Like Cryptokitties might be quite difficult to access for a lot of people who weren't, you know, in the crypto bubble, but games appear to be a lot more easily accessible for real people. So like, what's your thinking around that? How are you seeing that already happening?
Yeah, that's been our thesis from the very beginning, is that, you know, gamers and people that like these trading card games, you know, they're typically pretty nerdy human beings, and they like all these detailed rules and all the specifics of the cards and the combinations and all that. Well, like the same kind of nerd is the guy that's like studying all the different rules of this cryptocurrency, how it interacts, block times, rules, you know, size of transactions, whatever, all that kind of like detailed stuff. It appeals to the same nerd. And so we knew that from the very beginning that like, you know, the guys that really like these kind of like high intellectual card games are also going to be the people that are just like totally in love with crypto. And so that's been one of our key plans and key audiences from the very beginning of let's go get that guy that loves, you know, their gaming culture with the multiple currencies, with, you know, trying to figure out how to transact through eBay to go sell items in game that you're not supposed to. How do we bring that guy into an economy and a rule set where you can actually just do that? And, you know, our core audience is people that love crypto and people that love gaming. But, you know, as we keep expanding, we got to go find people that either love crypto or love gaming, and then get them to really appreciate the other half of that equation. So from the beginning, that's what we've done.
I would take it even a step further than that, because I think here, what we saw in the Philippines, like particularly amid the pandemic, people started playing blockchain games and were incentivized to figure out how to cash out these obscure ERC20 in-game rewards into real cash. And to me, that's a really important mindset shift, because previously, if you wanted to get into crypto markets, you had to have money to spend up front to, say, buy Bitcoin or buy Ethereum. And now that you can earn it, you've got all these new crypto users that are willing to jump through all those hoops and learn how to use this nascent technology in order to be able to turn it into real cash, which is cool. But I guess another aspect around that too, which I think is really important to Animoca brands, we hear Yat talk all the time about how gamers might be the first persona profile in the whole world to figure out that they really do have digital rights and they should be demanding them. And that's something that I think, you know, despite all the Facebook scandals, Cambridge Analytica, the whole bit, like we haven't seen real people wake up and realize that data is the most valuable resource in the whole world. But maybe gamers will be the ones to actually push this forward. Like, how does Animoca brands think about that, James?
So we're lucky. We're early investors into Dapper Labs, Cryptokitties, and we had a chance to publish it in China. That late 2017, we went in to join them, and that really changed our perspective, because once we saw, I'm not sure if you guys recall, but Cryptokitties crashed the Ethereum network, and that excited a lot of people in the industry. That was when the Animoca as a company really started thinking, is this really the future of where gaming could lead to? And we had we were bold enough to say that we felt that gaming was going to lead to the first billion users onto blockchain. When I joined 2018, we really started shifting gears. We knew that the challenges in free to play were the ad revenues. You know, you're fighting against the 10 cents in the world on budgets that were shoestring compared to what they were building, and they can keep doing it with a limited sort of bandwidth. So once we sort of experienced Cryptokitties sort of growth, we knew that this is something that the company wanted to focus on, and we bet on a couple things. We bet on interoperability being a lot more excitable for players, and once we we've seen too many games that folks have spent thousands of hours playing, and the game goes belly up, they lose all their assets. And we also bet that true digital ownership was going to change how people would choose to play. We knew that there's going to be teething processes and getting gameplay up to that level and quality. But we knew that the people that garnered and respected this is going to go, you're going to choose decentralized all day long before go back to centralized. We think it's going to be blurred together. We think gameplay at the end of the day is just going to be about a great game. Nobody's going to care about it. Is blockchain or not blockchain? The game's going to be amazing. You're going to play it, right? It's also a bonus that you can cash out and go buy something in the physical world. So we decided to go heavy into those development. And even if you look at our first development for F1 time trial, it was not a game. Most people laughed at it, right? But the people that tried it were like, oh, I get to own this. I'm going to stay with playing it and learning it. So I think the early adopters definitely proved really important for us as well. And they continuously sort of challenge it. But we think that gamers understand, token rewards and a lot of the basic fundamentals in blockchain. They already understand it because it's within the game already. Aside from the fact that you now have a non-fungible token and a fungible token.
Yeah, and I would add to that it's like a one-way valve. Like a player that comes in and they play Splinterlands, they'll tell us flat out, I'm not going to go back to those digital games. Like, why would I do that? Here, like we've had players that have traded tens of thousands of dollars worth of cards, and they're far richer for it. I've had people message me and say, hey, I'm a millionaire now because of these cards. Thank you so much. And the idea that they're going to go back to these traditional, Web 2.0 games and spend $500, $5,000, or even sometimes $10,000 or more playing something like that, I just don't see it happening. Even when the game, I love Splinterlands and I'm proud of it, but we're still not like a AAA game yet. But the players, there's so much value there relative to a little difference in art or even a big difference in art that the players don't seem to really care, and they're really happy to be here and grateful for asset ownership and economic freedom and not getting banned out of tournaments and things like that, because that's just not how it operates. And I don't know. I think I just don't see once a player has experienced this, I just don't think that they're going to go back and be like, oh, okay, well, asset ownership was awesome, but I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to play this game and put $10,000 into the ether and it's always gone. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Did you want to respond to that, James? Or
no? I think we're seeing folks that play games. I think this is that's interesting sort of point. I think that segues that the catalyst of how we're playing blockchain gaming is driving the next dreamers of game makers, and then we're seeing a lot of those coming to play. Because if you're playing a traditional game that is an amazing graphic, amazing physics, they're dreaming about, can we put this into blockchain? We're seeing that every day. People contacting us being like, we're from this studio, we don't know how to build a game like this. So that's the part that is extremely exciting for me to see, where I could play a high fidelity game or soon to be potentially we have a game on console, if I'm brave enough to say so. Can you bring a blockchain game onto console? So this is really where the giants like the Ubisofts are really sort of paying attention already, right? So when will we see this, right? I think it's a matter of time.
So, I mean, we're talking about growth here, and there's so many different concepts that are rolled into a blockchain game, from the game itself. And yes, there's been plenty of criticisms that, play to earn games have got a long way to go before competing with AAA game studios, which I think is kind of expected. It is a pretty early stage industry. But then we're talking about things like, digital property rights. How do you actually look at your total addressable market? I guess even to throw into the works there, like play to earn, a lot of the games in that space are kind of looking at the global jobs market and disrupting how people earn their money. So when you think about the total addressable market for NFT games, what does that look like for you?
After you, James.
To us, I think I'm not sure if you guys have followed one of the recent news. We acquired a studio out of Australia called Blowfish. And one of the reasons we acquired them, the team, Ben and team are very strong developers. I think 30% people strong. And one of the portfolio pieces we just announced last week is called Phantom Galaxy. So if you guys haven't seen the trailer, please take a look at it. We think it will be one of the first AAA titles coming in. So to your point, I think addressable market, we're still lagging behind in the sense that we're still targeting gaming. Right, we're still sort of educating the gaming market, so that addressable market, 2.5 billion, is up for grabs. And we're adding a new sort of opportunity in blockchain and play to earn. So we're seeing a mixture. At the beginning of it in 2020, I think we needed to target the crypto enthusiasts because they're interacting with the crypto. But now I think it's blurred. I think a lot of times we're getting a lot of users within our groups coming and asking like, what is this crypto? And games like Gamey and if you're not familiar, we have the largest digital collectible called Quid. A lot of them are traditional game players and card traders. But once we start integrating into a wallet, NFTs and drops, we're slowly educating behavioral changes. So we are after the larger piece of the pie of the whole gaming market to educate them.
Yeah, I tend to, I focus just on smaller goals, like I just want to hit my next milestone, and trying to get to 2.5 billion overnight is just not going to happen. But, we hit a million registered users. I think we're going to hit 2 million by the end of the year. And my next personal goal. So like I was part of a Ubisoft accelerator, and the guy was telling me, I asked him like, hey, when do you guys start caring about games? Like, how big do you have to be at Ubisoft before like Ubisoft will even take notice? And they said, okay, you got to get up to 50,000 DAU. I'm like, okay. So I sent him messages and got some high fives when we hit that. And then, we hit this million registered user mark. And then I started thinking, what's my next goal? And, I see Hearthstone at like 3.5 million daily active users. And I think, all right, that's our next tangible target. We can hit that. Maybe it's even by the end of next year that will be as big as that. And when you're talking about Blizzard games and just how popular those have been, like that's good company. So I know that's not the entire addressable market, but I in my day-to-day, I don't try to focus on all of it. I just try to think of what is my next tangible target, how do I get to it, and what's a reasonable goal to try to attain. So that's how I think through those things.
Just to add to that part, I think
your sanity.
Certainly. Yeah, so just add to that part. I think what we see is what's interesting within the Animoca ecosystem is how do you cross-pollinate each other's users? So in a group, we have about 80 million users. How do you do game discovery or NFT discovery? So we're trying a lot of different sort of mechanisms, and if you will, fail faster and trying to sort of case studies across different portfolio pieces.
And that's awesome. Yeah, Splinterlands has grown. We've spent almost no money on marketing. Somebody was asking me our cost of customer acquisition, and I've been thinking about that. Of like, we built these interoperable marketplaces on things like Wax, and we're hoping that there's another big one that's coming pretty soon for us. Like people will go and see the NFTs that are for sale and buy our NFTs, and that's actually their first exposure is them buying stuff from us, and it's like this marketing pathway for us that we're getting paid. In some cases, we have revenue of customer acquisition, which is something that just like groups wouldn't ever even think of. And it's, those kinds of partnerships with the external NFT platforms, with external exchanges, with external games, that as we kind of like marry our projects together, that's how we've had the best growth. We accept sand in our game, and people will spend that. We accept Gala and the Gala coin in here, and we'll work with Gala Games. And we just think, all of these things are additive. All of these users are, it's the industry is still small enough, and I think it will stay small enough or just interoperable enough, or we just get to share the user. It doesn't have to be all one or the other. That we all help each other grow with these assets
Absolutely.
and exchanges, and that's how we collectively have nice things, and it's cheaper than spending money on Facebook. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But we've talked a lot about all the potential and opportunity. It's not going to be a completely smooth road to success. Maybe we could talk a little bit about the challenges. And just, if you don't mind, a little plug. So currently Emfarsis is working with the Blockchain Game Alliance, and we're going to be producing a report, which is a state of the blockchain gaming industry. And one of the things that we're looking at is some of these challenges ahead. And it could be, anything from skills shortages and talent pipelining through to, perhaps not a good enough understanding of those key concepts around digital property rights, environmental impact, not enough on and off ramps. I mean, I think there's a whole range of challenges ahead with some really smart people working on them. But in your world, what challenges are you seeing ahead for your games?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay.
After you.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I think when you nailed it. I think one of the things that we're seeing most commonly is talent. So Animoca sits chain agnostic. So we've been working with multi-chain sort of approach, Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, soon to be Solana. So we work with quite a few different chains, and I think every chain has a shortage of engineers right now. I think finding a good engineer lead, partly because one is there's some new languages that are coming up, right? Obviously with Rust and Cadence and Flow. So that's one. But we're seeing a lot of creators jumping on board. I think Flow now has over 1,500 projects that are building on them. And then we're seeing Solana also sort of accelerate their gaming sort of strategy. So one is talent. A lot of people, we started seeing some, we kicked off an accelerator called, with our partners from Brink, called Launchpad Luna. We received about 180 submissions, shortlisting 30 of them, but a lot of great ideas, a lot of great founders coming from traditional entrepreneurship and coming into the blockchain. Some had basic knowledge. I think that some of the key challenges we saw was, understanding the token strategy, listing strategy. So, and also, and then basically engineering. Where can they hire? That's probably one of the biggest things that we're seeing in accelerating the industry.
So I'd echo that. Just finding really talented engineers is really, a primary concern. Finding really good creatives too, UI, UX. You have to do everything that free to play does, but now you have to do it on a mobile, and then you have to add all the complexity around blockchain on top of that, interoperability. We have airdrops and everything else, and it's just like layers of complexity. And where that rubber really meets the road is in the creative experience that somebody has on a mobile. It's just hard to get all of that to fit on one screen. I still think that the biggest concern for the industry is really just scalability. So, being on a chain that is going to foster your ability to get past, minimum number of transactions to actually function and grow and meet that mainstream requirement. I think the entire industry really has to grow into that, because not only do we have to have these blockchains and have them be scalable, but they also have to be sustainable for years to come. And there's still a lot of work to be done to make sure that there's enough transactions per second for all these projects to go around.
We've only got about 2 minutes left. So maybe as a parting word, what do you think is going to be the biggest trend for NFT games or the growth of NFT games in 2022? James?
I think we're seeing a lot of programmatic sort of NFTs, and sort of like, we're very big on metaverse, as I was mentioning earlier. We have about 15 metaverses that we made investments in. So we do see that how do we create a cross utility? How do NFTs cross across the universe, move across the different metaverses? I think that's going to be really interesting for us to see. That could be a trend.
I think it's going to be the move of traditional games into blockchain. That it won't be every single AAA studio. I think a lot of those guys will be a little bit slow and cautious, but the private companies and the private studios that are out there are going to make giant moves into blockchain games, because when you don't have as much regulatory pressure, I think they can see the writing on the wall that play to earn is going to be the next wave. Whereas free to play really took over for the last decade or so. I think the vision is already clear that it's play to earn is going to be the next big wave. So that's what I'm expecting to see a lot of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be a massive year. This has been such a good chat. Thank you so much for making the time, guys, and look forward to continuing discussions, hopefully into 2022 as some of this stuff comes about.
That sounds great.
Thank you, Leah.
Thanks,
you guys.
Leah.
Thanks, Aggroed.
Bye.
Bye.